Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories, to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose.
According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2022, their annual homelessness report to Congress, more than half of all people experiencing homelessness insecurity in the country were in 4 states, California, New York, Florida, Washington, with over 25,000 experiencing housing insecurity in our state. And so going back to what I was saying before about, just the conversations of, the politics behind it all, what have been some common misconceptions that you hope to dispel, as people go back and forth on, what the solution is to ending homelessness in our society?
Let me listen to Tiana. I think Tiana wanted to layer that.
Thank you. Yes, I was just about to touch on that point, and I wanted to also just draw out what you were speaking about, Brad, with understanding the humanity of people that are experiencing housing insecurity, and that there is a misconception, which we're going to get into in a little more depth, just about how people fall into those situations. And I think, Paul, you had mentioned that, you have an ability, there's a responsibility in your position, specifically at Friends of Youth, but you also have an accountability to the community and your clients in sharing those personal stories. And I think when people hear those personal stories and they see those authentic narratives, they're able to more deeply understand how people end up in unfortunate situations. And some people really are closer to ending up in a situation experiencing housing insecurity, food insecurity, addiction, and any of those issues. They're a lot closer than they may think. And just understanding the systemic problems that lead to, these societal issues that we're dealing with at large. But I just wanted to touch on that point because, Brad, I really loved that you were talking about just understanding that at the end of the day, we're all people, and we all struggle. So, and Paul, I'll let you go ahead and answer the question.
No, I think you'd asked some earlier questions about my journey and why did I choose this. Not as much as it chose me. I think it was just you find that we're a good marriage. Remember this, especially in the not-for-profit space, anywhere in the USA, doesn't matter what the sector is. For-profit companies have an obligation to their shareholders. Okay, so it's about the shareholders is getting as much profit or value to their shareholders. Not-for-profits have an obligation to their communities. Okay, and it's getting as much value or profit for their community. So that's the difference in, why I choose to work in the not-for-profit versus the for-profit space. And to answer that question, just related to, like you said, there's many things, the unsheltered, unhoused, housing insecurity, You kind of really answered my question, Tiana. You just didn't realize you were answering my question. So for folks like me, we believe in our sector that homelessness is really caused by, their systems, or we call systems of oppression. Those are the reasons at the heart of the homeless world. And if you really want to solve for homelessness, you really have to deal with these systems of oppression. I would further broaden it out to what most people, you talked about misconceptions. There's really 3 buckets that I would say, hey, you really have to address these 3 buckets at the same time. So there's structural factors, there's big structural factors. And I think that's what I would say, is probably 40 to 50% of the homelessness issue. When I say structural factors, I mean, it's poverty, it's racism, it's historical trauma, It's lack of economic opportunities, it's lack of affordable housing, it's ableism, it's homophobia, it's these big structural things. How do you solve for poverty? How do you solve for racism? How do you solve for historical trauma? That's really half of the, of the battle. If you can get there, you're really doing a good job. And so when I say for us in the sector, we really look at as far as how do we attack these factors. But then there's also system factors, and I think Brad, you talked a little bit about that. Those are those gaps in the system that haven't been addressed, that still take a lot of, whether it's bureaucracy, politics, resources, still take a lot. Okay. But those are just gaps. It's lack of coordination. There's all these providers providing homelessness services. Are they coordinated? Like when I said we were not 24/7, facility a few years ago. So what would happen is you post your hours. And so your clients, people who are accessing your facility, they know that you're open from this to this. But there's not a coordination between, okay, there's somewhere close to go. If you're closed, somewhere else is just open where they can easy access. So you may be closed, and the only other shelter that's open at the time is in Auburn, and you are on the east side. So you're asking somebody to go all the way to Auburn. It's those coordination factors, lack of engagement strategies. How do we engage? What's your outreach? Whatever. Those are just gaps. So there's a lot of system things, and that's when you have things like the regional authority or local, human services trying to deal with that. I would say that's another 30% of the problem. It's there's these things. And then really there's 20%, which everyone thinks it's 100%, 80 to 100%, which is really about the individual and the complex set of reasons within the individual, whether it's behavioral health, mental health, whether it's so many different things. I don't feel safe. I can't be at home for one reason or the other. I go through these things or whatever. So that's really only about 20% if you think about it. But in the political world, a lot is made of, it's like, people need to be responsible. People need to do this, that, the other. I do have cities here on the east side who tell me they don't have a homeless problem, even when I know most of the kids come from their cities. So it's those kind of things where they don't believe that there's a problem because it's too complex for them to understand. If they have affluence and they have resources, why would our people be struggling with homelessness? But that's kind of what I would say is the general misconception related to homelessness, that a lot of people put a lot of energies into the individual side, and those are things that historically, in any city in America, we have a very good way of dealing with some of those things. But the bigger things, that's why it continues to be. And if you are looking from a historical perspective globally, or even time and whatever, depending on who you believe, whatever, the saying is Jesus was homeless. Well, in Jesus' time, even, there was still discrimination, there was still poverty, and that's why people end up hopelessness. So it wasn't about, and they had a lot of systemic factors, just the same. There was no coordination, there was no engagement, there was no formal services, ETC, or formal systems. So you can look at it in many different ways, but for me, I fully believe that it's those three big buckets that I attribute towards that. And me spending time on the systems of oppression would really move the ball a lot faster than a lot of other things.
Wow, thank you so much for really breaking that all down and discussing how so many different systemic problems lead into the issue of homelessness. And I wanted to ask you if there was one point that you could drive home to people that have difficulty understanding that, we live in a system of interconnected, forces, and, people have intersecting identities that contribute to some of these societal factors as well. What would that point be that you would like to drive home?
Yeah, I would just say this. Anyone can be homeless for any different reasons. And if you want to look at the data, just look at the data. You know, the truth is 1 in 14 Americans is going to be homeless for at least 6 weeks. So this is just the reality of it. So anyone can be. So as much as people think, yeah, you know, I have a solid job, I have this, I have family, I have supports, I have money, I have whatever. The people who access our services and supports over time, there's a lot of them who had all those things and they still ended up homeless. You know, so it's one of those things that any one of us, the three of us, could be end up homeless here in the next 10 years, and we are not even aware about that. So I just try to give people the data. It's like 1 in 14 Americans experiences homeless for at least 6 weeks, and
Wow.
yeah, that's just a national stat for over, I don't know, 50 years or so.
Right. One thing that, we discuss at Youth Care that we acknowledge is that homelessness looks different than just the people you see on the streets. Like most of the time, homelessness in youth looks like couch surfing, going from friend to friend, family member to family member, because you don't have a solid home base. And so you don't get a visual every day for all of the kids that actually are homeless because they're normally, just finding ways to temporarily get by until they, have to get to the next situation. And I think it's so pivotal for people to step back and understand that it can impact anyone. I remember going to at UW, it was my first year there, and they gave a presentation on homelessness in the area, and they had some guest speakers. I can't remember the exact name of the presentation, but basically, it was a really humanizing experience because these people basically explained that they had a home, they had an apartment, but the prices just went up and up and up. Their pay wasn't going up, and before you knew it, they were displaced. And they were once people who were working with stable jobs, 9 to 5, apartment to themselves, that just got priced out of the area and have no home. And so it really could be anyone, and that's what people fail to understand.
Anyone, anytime. Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad, for bringing up that point. And kind of shifting gears, I know you've talked, Paul, about how you find your work really fulfilling, be able to really connect with the community and make a tangible impact for marginalized communities, specifically experiencing housing insecurity. And at Friends of Youth, you operate 24 programs in over 18 cities and also hold national accreditation for providing support for youth in challenging circumstances. What do you find most rewarding about your work? I know you've shared a bit, but if there's anything you'd like to add on.
Oh, yeah, this is a 15-second answers. This is
Okay.
I think it's this: the days when I don't have it is the days when you realize how much you like your job. Is the days you don't have it, not the days when everything is going according to plan. And it's, for me, it's this: it's on any given day, I have a job that if I choose to, I can find a unit of performance that is going to add meaning to somebody's life, and that's really it. That's the most rewarding, that I actually have that privilege, that I could, if I could choose to stay at home, but I could come to work even the day I just don't feel it. And that one day that I'm not feeling it, the one thing I can do, I know I can make one phone call and it will be a game changer for somebody. So I am lucky like that. I am very grateful that I have that opportunity. But it's really that. It's just I have a job that I could add meaning to somebody's life every day just by one thing.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. In moving topics a little bit further, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics shows that overall there was a 5.4% increase over the past year in Seattle, Bellevue, and Tacoma in their consumer price index, while overall housing costs have increased by 6.8%. You just described all the, high moments and the great work that you do. And so we were wondering if you could share a bit about how Friends of Youth is supporting vulnerable populations that struggle to make ends meet during this time, and if there are any particular programs that those in need can look to if they're struggling financially and facing current hardship.
Yeah, I will say this. There's so many different, there's so many different vulnerable populations. I gave you that 1 in 14 Americans, and for a period of 6 weeks, here is the thing, and this is, if there's nothing we got out of this conversation, please spread the word. Okay. And I think that's usually my spiel that I have, that I really am convicted on. So for you and the three of us on this call, if we were to be homeless tomorrow, we either have the fortune of education or age or something that maybe we would know where to start and say, for you two, you could be like, maybe let me call Paul. Okay. For me, it'd be like, I worked in this sector. I know I can go to a church or something like that. Okay. So we are so fortunate that we have something that maybe that first few days or first week, we would probably have some kind of coping mechanism. Now, juxtapose that with a 14-year-old who's maybe been forced out of the family where it's not safe to be in the house that they know, whether it's here or they came from, I don't know, Alabama, and they're here today. That kid who walked from Guatemala and is at the border and being adjudicated. There's so many different situations where people are not where they should be or could be. And so our job, the three of us today, the most important part of our job is to try and get that 6 weeks to 0 days. Because during that state of vulnerability, and that's the words you use, that's when things happen. That's when the things we hope will not happen actually happen. A 14-year-old, 10 days into homelessness, is selling their body. The coming back from that is going to take a lot of work and sometimes never happen. Okay. So this understanding of it could happen to anyone. And the goal is to reduce that amount of time that, at least for us in the nuts and bolts of what we do. So spreading the word about, yes, there is this wellness center, and that's why we have the ribbon cutting, so that people know there's a place that they can always get, 3 meals, and they can get a shower unconditionally, and they can get their clothes laundered, and they can also get a bed, is the most important thing you can do. Okay. It's just spreading that word. I know a place. So when somebody says something, you can quickly say, I know a place. When you see something, you can be like, call Paul. Paul, there's somebody on 87th Street, da, 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 da. Could you send your outreach team? I'm seeing this person going through this, and I don't know, but I think that's when you talk about particular programs, I think that's one of them that I would say it's this hopelessness feeling that we need to alleviate, that you can actually do something. And there are many programs out there. Most people know us for homelessness, but we also do child welfare. And a lot of child welfare is foster care. There's over 4,000 kids in the foster care system in the state of Washington who do not have a family. They're housed in hotels, or they're being sent to other states for whatever. Again, it's people like to say that's foster care. Well, it's the same thing. They can't be in their natural home setting for one reason or the other. So they're in essence homeless too. So they can't be at home for one reason or the other. And the biggest thing we can do is spread the word. So we do have programs that do that. We do have partners that do that. So even if we're not doing it, somebody else is doing it. And the biggest highlight that I'd say is it's not just us, it's youth care. It's putting the word out that you don't have to be helpless. There are actually people who are doing this work, and they do it at a very high quality.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing that, truly. It's really important to highlight the work that people do, and that there are, organizations like Friends of Youth, that are doing high quality work and just spreading the word. It's simply knowing that the services are out there is a pivotal part of helping people, because there are so many people that don't know that Friends of Youth exist, that don't know that a lot of these nonprofit organizations exist, that have so many resources that are ready and willing to welcome people with open arms. So if anyone listening takes anything away from that, tell people about the organizations that are here to serve those in need. If you see someone in need, there are people, places, and resources. So spread the word.
Amen.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And Paul, thank you. Really brought up an important point about the access issue with having so many different services that you're trying to coordinate for people and figuring out the best, most efficient way to ensure that people can find what they need when they need it when they're in such a vulnerable place. And I imagine it could be really difficult when you're working with marginalized communities, specifically when you are a part of that community, and it can draw on your emotional reserves as you strive to remedy societal issues that often disproportionately affect our community, being in the Black community. And for example, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority reported in their 2022 point in time count survey, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that 25% of people experiencing housing insecurity in King County identify as Black or African American, while the 2020 US Census reports only 7% of Black or African Americans live in the Seattle area. It's a lot to kind of take in and absorb. But how do you take time to recalibrate so that you can show up as your best self each day as you engage in this work?
Yeah, quick answer. Again, I think just knowing yourself, understanding the challenge. And, everyone says, when you pursue your passion and when you find your passion, do that thing. Okay. But that passion can also harm you if you're not careful. So, I think it's over time, and that's the best thing about experience. And that's what I like to tell my employees. The thing about leadership, it's not a part-time job. So it's a full-time job, and you have to lead, especially when you don't want to lead. It's like 7 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm at home. I want to have my dinner. I want to watch the game or whatever it is. And that's inevitably when the phone rings. Okay. And there is a, crisis that you need to deal with. So you don't ignore the call, and you take the call because you are a leader. But that can be taxing on you. So it's really finding and balancing what your outlets are. For me, it's I love I'm a soccer guy, and I follow the English Premier League. So that's kind of my jam. And so on Saturday from 4:30 in the morning, I'm up watching the games. Don't get a lot of calls at 4:30, so that's always nice that I can do that. But one of the things that I've learned over time is, make time for yourself. I run a lot. So the good news about running is the phone can't ring. So you're just running. And so if you make it 20 minutes, for 20 minutes, you're not going to be interrupted. If you make it an hour, for an hour, no one's going to interrupt you. And that's your release. That I always say, find those things that, you can be alone and you can do your reflection. And last thing what I try to do, which works very well for most people, I advise this, is like every 8 weeks, I just block my calendar and I say I'm taking off. And doesn't mean I'm going anywhere fancy. Sometimes I don't even have anywhere to go, but I just say it's 8 weeks. So I'm going to take 2 days off. I might be at the house doing absolutely nothing, but being intentional about that. At every 8 weeks, I have to see something on my calendar that says, you're not going to work. And that's the way I balance it out.
Awesome.
Wow. Yeah, that's so valuable. Just understanding that we do need to take that time to prioritize ourselves and our well-being. And I love that you said you block your calendar, because when you're so passionate about, an organization's mission like you are, it's hard, to say, no, I have to take a step back to, preserve my mental health and, also my physical health as well. So thank you. Yeah, for bringing that up. And Brad, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, you gave a lot of good tips and advice that, you follow to keep yourself grounded as you engage in this work. And so I was just going to ask, reflecting on, your younger self and navigating your professional journey, of those things you mentioned, is there like one particular thing that, you wish you followed more that would have made life a little easier? Or is there an additional piece of advice that you would have given yourself?
Simple answer, very, very simple. And yes, every day as I do my job, I always look at my 18-year-old self, my 20-year-old self, and I really admire that person. I'm like, that guy again. That guy knew what he wanted and he was going to do everything to get to where he was. And now it's not the same. Now you calculate risk and you calculate this and that, and not as gang-ho. So I would tell anyone, just have the courage to be imperfect, because that's what happens when you're young. you don't worry about being perfect. You're just going, and you're like, this is what I really want to do, and I'll pursue it. And that happened for me. So having the courage to be imperfect is what I'd advise anyone. What I advise my younger self or anyone else out there who's young.
Awesome.
That's great. Yes, amazing. And Paul, lastly, we ask all of our guests this question, and as we mentioned before with this project, is we're hoping to provide mentorship and promote representation for early career Black professionals like ourselves and our listeners. And we would just love to hear more about how identity has influenced you and, what you decided to pursue. And you shared a bit about that. But specifically, what does Blackness mean to you?
So I have
a big question.
Yeah, no, I saw this question and I was drooling over it. So I have this one is unique. My parents are immigrants from Africa. So, and my dad worked in the diplomatic service. So he had this great job for the Kenyan government. He worked, that's where we're from. And we got to, I guess gallivant around the world when I was a young kid. Didn't know how good we had it. We hated every minute of it because we were always traveling. We never could plan routes or have friends for long and that kind of thing. So when you reflect back on your journey, here's a thing that I always remember, because this is in the 70s, early 80s. Most of the places we went, it was, my classes were small because you were in bougie schools and that kind of thing. There was the diplomatic service and that kind of thing. But the thing about it was, most of the pictures I have, you're often the only Black kid, or we were often the only Black family in a lot of these spaces. And, kids can be mean and those kind of things. And you grow up just dealing with that and learning how to code switch a lot, learning how to do different things to fit in and to get along, and whatever trauma is associated with that is also dealing with that. But what Blackness means to me today, especially, is just a pride of who I am, who my family is, where I am, where we ended up, and how, especially the word I say is, we endured. It's just that perseverance and endurance, and I often tell my wife and friends that it's like, you do know we have no limits to endurance. There's just none.
We sure don't.
That's so true.
You're telling me all these things. There's no limit to our endurance. So don't test mine. Okay. Yeah. I will endure and thrive. But I really say that's what I think personifies my life, my family, and my unique journey is that endurance and that just inbuilt determination to succeed regardless of what's thrown at you. And I wouldn't say it's just unique to me. I'd say it's a lot of Black people I know.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I disagree. The resilience, that's something that we have within us, and it's allowed us to be able to get where we have today. So thank you so much, Paul. Is there anything else that you would like to add at all after our conversation today? This has been amazing.
Yeah, I just really wanted to say, first of all, thank you. I think when I got your emails and going back and forth, and we often talk in our work about going to this restorative work thing, within the sector, and you already alluded to that. It's the secondary trauma and some of those things. And I really just want to say thank you to both of you, young folks doing a lot. And I'm in awe of you and admiring you. Because you're really taking a human-centered approach and reaching out to people like me. We're so scheduled and just doing our thing. But I really appreciated that, young people are interested in what I'm doing, which is usually a head scratcher. Really? No, I don't get that a lot. I get a lot on every channel and every whatever, people come after you. Fox News has come after me, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. Please keep the human-centered approach where it's about the person, and let's focus on that person as a human being, and especially as a person of color, and what's going on with them. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Paul. This has just been great, and we've appreciated all the insight you shared with us, and just you giving us your time. We know you're so busy, so it just means the world that you're here with us and that supporting us on this journey as well.
Well, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Let's do it again. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We're beyond grateful, and thank you for your leadership in the community.
Appreciate you. Enjoy.
Thanks. We hope to connect again soon. All right.
Later.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.